Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of the Mailbag, the TLR Roundtable with me and Craig. Happy Friday. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Craig? All right. I saw Craig pointing to his headset, so I'm not sure if he could hear me or not. Are you able to hear me?
I can't hear.
All right. It looks like Craig might be having some difficulties. Can you guys hear me? Can somebody in the chat let me know if they can hear me? Can you all hear me? Can somebody let me know in the chat if they can? Okay. Strange that Craig can't hear me. Odd. Okay. Do you want to try going out?
So it's just me. Sorry, guys. Let me see if I can make an adjustment here. Don't know why I can't hear anything.
All right. Why don't we just chat a little bit while Craig is getting his stuff figured out? Not really sure what's going on.
Jamie, I'm going to dip out and pop back in and see if that fixes anything.
Sounds good. All right. Odd. I could hear him, but he couldn't hear me. That's strange. Anyway, hope everybody's having a good Friday. We have 6 questions that we're going to answer for you. We have kind of a shorter than usual show today, so we're not going to do the bad tweets. I feel like those get a little bit repetitive. It seems like it's the same people saying the same things over and over again. So we're going to skip that this week. But you know what we can do while we're waiting for Craig is we can talk a little bit about some of the players that the Chargers have been checking in on or have expressed some interest in, different levels of interest. So we got some names from Garrett earlier in the week, and I will go ahead and share those. See if I can find them here. Okay, let's see here. So last week, the big name that came up that kind of surprised most of us, I think. Oh, there's Craig.
There I am, and now I can hear you.
All right.
Sorry, what are we talking about?
I was going to go ahead and reveal the list of players that Garrett shared with us about that the team is doing.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so there's one big name that I think it caught me. Well, it definitely caught me by surprise, Craig. I don't know if it caught you by surprise or not, based on the position and what's going on with the team. But the first name that popped up was Alvin Kamara, the Saints running back. The Chargers checked in on him last week before he signed his extension with the Saints. The thought being that they would potentially trade for him and extend him and have him here for a couple of years. Obviously, to team with J.K. Dobbins this year and to be his replacement next year, thinking he could help with the passing game since Dobbins hasn't really contributed much in the passing game and obviously breathe some life into the running game as well. I don't know about you, Craig, but I thought that was kind of surprising given how well J.K. is playing and that their issues definitely are not in the running game. They're in the offensive line and the receiving and tight end groups. A little surprising to me that they'd be checking in on a running back.
Especially at this point. Now, if we harken back to the preseason, we knew that a couple of names popped up, namely Saquon Barkley when he was out there on the market. So it fits the mold of the type of running back I think they were looking for, someone who's dynamic in both the run and passing game. But at this point into the season, it seems a little questionable, being like you mentioned, the deficiencies aren't necessarily with the backs. I don't think we know what their full capabilities are to this point because, I mean, a lot of what they're doing is having to come basically on their own ability. J.K. Dobbins has been popping a bunch of runs to the outside. Not very much is going on consistently between the A and B gaps. So you see him trying to make plays that way. But yeah, Alvin Kamara, while it was a fun name, at this point in the year didn't make a ton of sense to me.
So I agree with you. It didn't make a lot of sense to me to be looking for a running back when the interior of the offensive line is a mess and they're having trouble passing the ball. I don't think the running game is the biggest issue they have to fix right now, but I understand looking ahead a little bit for the next couple of years for sure. A couple other names that they checked in on, and some of these have already been out, and some of these are names that we've discussed, but we had not confirmed. Cooper Kupp was a name they checked in on last week, thinking probably after the Rams' performance last night on Thursday Night Football, the Kupp is probably staying put with the Rams, but that's a name they checked in on. Also, Deontay Johnson, David Njoku, somebody that we've discussed at length, and Evan Ingram, somebody else we talked about. And they also called about Raiders backup tight end Harrison Bryant, but he's injured.
Yeah.
So, Tennessee tight end Chig Okonkwo is another name they checked in on.
Yeah, another lightning round fave a couple of years ago in the draft, one of the sleeper picks who's making a name for himself out in Tennessee. So not really surprised that Tennessee doesn't want to move off of a younger ascending player who's cost control right now. Contract isn't very expensive. And even though they're technically rebuilding, Chig is kind of one of those pieces that you could do that with.
All right, so we've got our questions lined up. Definitely some interesting names there for the Chargers checking in on. Obviously, just based on the names they're looking at, they realize they've got issues in the passing game, particularly in the wide receiver and tight end groups. So they're looking into those names. Little surprised we didn't see any interior offensive linemen in that list, at least a guard or a center to solve some of those issues. But I guess they feel like they can fix those issues from within. So, and the other thing to note about some of those guys is they're not all rentals. A lot of those guys are signed through next year at least, if not longer. So they're kind of looking in that, immediate help and long-term help. They're trying to balance the now with the future, which is encouraging, not selling out to just help this team this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to look at it long term, just essentially because this team isn't really in a rebuild. It's kind of retoolish / upgrading. So if they want to bring in a guy right now that can contribute, it makes sense to be able to at least get a few years out of them while you're also building up the team through the draft. And having, vets that can contribute right away will do them a great service, specifically if we're talking on the offensive side of the ball with Justin Herbert. So just got to build it again through the draft and supplement it with these free agency and trades.
So let's get into our questions. We're going to start with the Discord questions, and I think we have 5 of those. So let's bring up the first question here. And Craig, you can go ahead and read it, and then we'll both answer it. Are you there, Craig?
Okay. It's me again. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm out again. For some reason, I can't hear you. No idea what's up with StreamYard. Okay.
All right. This is not our day. So Craig is going to have to check out here for a second to get his audio back in. So while he does that,
we're so professional. All right, Jamie, give me a second. I'm going to try this again.
Okay. I'm not sure this has ever happened to this degree during a live show before. I guess if nothing else, it shows we're human. So let's go ahead and read this question. I'll give you my thoughts on it, and then Craig can chime in when he hopefully gets his audio back up and running. So JK Pavilion from the Discord says, or Pavilanian, I butchered that name, sorry. Do we root for a wild card berth or a better draft position? For me, I'm hoping this is a sarcastic question, to be honest, because for me, they're 3-3. They're definitely not out of anything at this point. So I'm not a fan of looking at this as let's root for a better draft position. I think they should be trying to win games and trying to get into that wild card spot. Craig is back. Can you hear me?
Back again. I am. We're gonna win this battle this time. I promise. I'm gonna do my very best. I have no idea what's going on. Bear with us, folks. Apologies.
All right. So I already answered this question. Craig, I'll throw it to you. At 3-3, do we root for a wild card berth or a better draft position?
I'm never going to root for better draft position until the team is completely out of it. I mean, if it's a down and out situation where essentially I mean, I know we all joke about, being down with the tank towards the end of seasons where there's no chance at all for this team to make the playoffs, but we're not at that point yet. So for me, it's always going to be about getting into the playoffs. I believe that any team that can get into the dance, if they fought hard enough to get there, has an opportunity to make some noise. And I just believe that this Chargers team has yet to really reach its ceiling. They're constructing it on the go. So let's just give it an opportunity to see where we are here in a few weeks before we all want to abandon ship.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to get Joey Bosa back this week, probably on a snap count. DJ Chark is questionable, probably means he's going to play. It seems like some of these guys they've been waiting on are making their way back. It's not an overly difficult schedule. It's a schedule that we all thought they could win somewhere between 9 and 11 games with going into the season. So I really don't think they're at a point now where you bail on trying to win games and start thinking about draft position. I think this is a team that is capable of making the playoffs as a wild card. I think they need it. And I think in year one of Harbaugh, you don't want to start talking about throwing games away.
No, and that's not Jim Harbaugh's style anyway. So they're going to compete until the bitter end. I don't think that matches up with his persona and the way that he wants to run his team. So it's more than likely the last thing on his mind, especially again at 3-3. There's so much football left to play. 2 weeks away from the trade, well, less than 2 weeks now away from the trade deadline. So if it's about churning the roster and making it better, and also keep in mind at the very beginning of the season, Joe Ortiz pretty much like pounded the table about competing. So they can't sing that narrative and then basically back out of it. I don't think either one of them has that in them. So as much as some fans may really not like what the team currently is, guys, it's far from over. There's so much more to go. Let's just ride this one out.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, as painful as Monday night's game was, there was some kind of flukish qualities associated with that. That the fumble by Jalen Reagor, the fumble by Tart after the interception, a couple other missed opportunities here and there. I mean, the Chargers were a couple plays away from blowing that game out. So they didn't score a touchdown. They struggled. I'm not trying to paint this as a positive because they played like trash and they got bullied by a bad football team, and that's not encouraging. But in spite of that, they still had every opportunity to win that game. So I don't think the sky is falling by any means, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Nah, that game was such a comedy of errors. I mean, I can't get over the fact that Jalen Reagor has 9 career fumbles, the 9th being in the Arizona game, and that's the first one he's ever lost in his career. That's such Chargers luck.
Yeah, just dumb fucking luck is the best way to put it at this point. And I think they'll correct some of those issues and they'll be better coming out this week. All right. Next question is from Grillivin. Is Justin Eboigbe a real person?
We saw him drafted, so unless he's a figment of all of our imaginations, yeah. The problem is just that he was a project. It was established when he was drafted, so just working through the rookie pains. I mean, he was never really, I think, realistically, maybe some of us thought he would be more of a contributor in a rotation at this point. I mean, he's bounced in and out, but I could understand why people feel like he's lost right now because he's not making a big impact. There are really no splash plays to speak of. But again, like the team knew what they were doing when they drafted him. They established what they thought he was. So going to have to exercise just a little bit of patience with him.
I'm going to go a different way with the answer. And I'm going to say right now, I think he's more of a concept than a person.
Okay.
He's kind of bordering on Mark Webb territory right now. We haven't really seen him. We think he's there. We're not sure. We hope he can produce when he gets out there. But right now, kind of a concept more so than a person. So hopefully he goes from being kind of a specter and becomes a real person and starts contributing here pretty soon. But I mean, you're talking about a 4th round pick, right? 4th? Yeah, he was the 4th round pick, right?
Yeah, I think they said they had like a 2nd round grade on him though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 4th round pick in, I think what they probably thought was a pretty deep defensive line group at the time. It's proved that it's not that deep, but hopefully he can get some snaps as we get through the middle of the season here.
Yeah, I'm sure the production will go up. And again, that's a really big ghost, man. It's like 300 pounds. It's hard to miss him. But yeah, he hasn't been someone that is of note to this point. But I mean, we saw the skill set when we did our scouting of him. It makes sense in the system for what he could be. Just right now, hasn't been able to put it on tape quite yet.
Fingers crossed he does, because they need some help inside.
Absolutely. Build that rotation out.
Yep. Next question. You want to go ahead and read it?
Yeah, I got it. So this is Charger Ray 37. Based on the players the Chargers are inquiring about, do you think they are in a contend now mode, or are the players for next year? What is going on with my screen? Players for the next year and beyond, or some sort of combo. Let me reread that up. I don't know what was going on just now. Based on the players the Chargers are inquiring about, do you think they are in contend now mode, or are the players for the next year and beyond, or some sort of combo? What do you think, Jamie?
We kind of already touched on this, but based on the names of the guys that they're checking in on, I would say it's a combo. They're looking for guys who can help them right now, but who have at least 1 year left on their contract, or guys who they might be open to extending, so that they can be around for more than just this year. So it doesn't. I think they're in a win now mode, but I don't think they're in a win now mode with a rental.
Yes.
They want to win now and set themselves up for at least next year in the process. So that's where I think they're headed with this, which is good news, because that means they're looking at the big picture and they're not selling out in a season where the best they're going to get is likely a wild card.
Yeah, absolutely. So not to basically repeat everything that was just stated, but kind of alluded to this in an earlier question, but it speaks to compete now. So if the idea is to compete, these types of moves make sense. So yes, you want to not sell out for this season or tank for this season, but you want to be able to compete with players that can actually produce on the field and not just throw no names out there. I mean, for teams we've seen in the past do that. So I think the guys that they're looking at now do a little bit of both. They provide you some of what you're missing right now. Currently, we all know where they're deficient. It doesn't cover all the bases. We're looking at more skilled players than anything right now, but it makes sense for an offense that's having trouble putting points up on the board. And it makes life a little bit easier for your quarterback. Will also assist in your run game when we're talking receivers and tight ends, even though we know that like some running backs names popped up on that list. But overall, it just proves to me that they're still looking to be competitive, even if they don't see themselves. I mean, they're not going to come out and say, we're not trying to win a Super Bowl, but I think they have a realistic view on where they are. And these type of players tell me that, hey, this gives us an opportunity to be in the mix now, and we can build on that into the future.
Absolutely. And that's what you want. Big picture thinking, not just thinking right now in the moment in a season where, they're probably going to cap out at somewhere around 10 wins in the best case scenario. So you don't want to sell out too much on a season where you're probably not, you can make the playoffs, but you're probably not going to make too much of a run.
For sure.
Next question is from Russ99. He says, what can the Chargers adjust in the offensive game plan to get better success with the players who are not injured?
If we're talking, and I know that we're leaning towards offense because that's the biggest bugaboo right now. Jamie, I think you might agree with this. Let's not have to run the ball on first down majority of the time. Let's allow your quarterback to go out there and sling it a little bit, which may lighten the box up, have your safeties come out of those single high looks and drop back into two highs. And that'll create some additional opportunities for your running backs, maybe make life a little bit easier on the guys that are blocking on the interior. For me, it's just Greg Roman getting out of his own way and maybe stepping outside of his comfort zone just a little bit and allowing the run to open up the pass. And then you want to get the ball out quickly because the interior pressure is still a bit of an issue. Establish your screen game because you have some guys that are pretty decent at that. And you got like some really good tackles on the outside that can move. You've got some guards that, both of your guards are technically athletic. So you can get them out on the move as well.
Athletic.
Yeah, technically athletic. Yeah. The RAS scores, when you all that stuff.
Theoretically athletic.
Yeah, they're theoretically. In practice,
conceptually.
A lot left to be desired when we're talking about actual play on the field. But yeah, so there are things here and there that you can do schematically to make it work. Again, getting the ball quickly out of Herbert's hands into guys who are able to make a little bit happen after the catch and allowing them to move the ball that way and then mixing the run in from there. But you can't just keep pounding your head against the wall on first and second down against these teams who are stacking the box and just assuming that you're going to outmuscle them and all those guys are going to win their one-on-ones. It's not realistic at this point.
Yeah, I think throwing the ball more on first down is important. Ideally with some play action because teams know they want to run it, so it should work. I think they need to get the running backs more involved in the passing game, specifically Vidal. We've seen him catch a couple passes and have success doing it. Every route doesn't need to be a wheel route, but something to get him the ball in space in the middle of the field quickly, get the ball out of Herbert's hands and let Vidal create with the ball in his hands, I think would be effective. The thing that stood out to me last week on Monday was they did nothing to help Herbert in terms of moving the pocket. He was 7 to 10 steps deep on every single pass attempt. There were no bootlegs. They didn't move the pocket. They didn't change the pocket. They did it once that I can remember, and it didn't happen until the fourth quarter. I think it was on the last drive of the game. So to me, they need to find a way to give Herbert more easy buttons. And right now, standing 7 to 10 steps behind the offensive line, particularly behind that interior offensive line, and expecting to be successful with the way that line is breaking down is not going to work. So you got to move him. I think you got to have some zone options, some read options. Show that you're willing, now that he's getting healthier, show that you're willing to have him keep the ball and run the ball on occasion just to keep the defense honest. The thing that we've talked about a lot is I think they've got to get the ball out of his hands a little bit faster with the way that the interior offensive line is playing. So to me, I think you got to see more wide receiver screens, some slants, things to get the ball out of his hands and into the wide receiver's hands, hopefully in space on the move early in plays. It's just taking too long for pass plays to develop. Spacing's got to get better. So I think those are some things they can do. Some tunnel screens, some bubble screens, some slants, some speed outs. Just get the ball out of his hands and get the ball into the playmaker's hands and let them try to create. I just feel like they're making everything way too difficult right now.
It almost feels like they're trying to stand on ceremony at this point. Like, we understand what they want their identity to be, but let's be honest. They don't technically have all the horses they need to be a dominant run game. And I think we figured that out now through, 6 matchups. It looks good when they're playing against lesser competition, but some of the bigger boys, they have a hard time really moving the ball on early downs when we're talking runs. And again, there are ways that you can help your running game, but typically it's through the quick passing game. Like you mentioned on play action, there's probably going to be an opportunity. I would not be shocked. Actually, I would love to see this. If the first play from scrimmage is a play action pass to DJ Chark, just to see what happens, and also to loosen the defense up to let you know, hey, I know what you've seen on tape. I know what we've given you, but we're going to mix it up just a little bit to give you something to think about. And I'm sure it'll pay off at least early in the game. And then you just kind of have to maneuver off of your script from there. Because, we've watched some games where the first 10 to 15 plays are pretty decent, but after that, everything just falls off of a cliff and becomes super redundant. So you just have to be able to mix and match. Of course, coordinators, you're supposed to have a game plan that is specific to each team that you play. But if what you planned on doesn't work right out of the gate, you got to adjust.
I think another thing they need to do better, too, is building on concepts. They don't seem to do a lot of that. It's something that Shane Steichen did really well when he was here. He'd set up a play with a particular motion, a particular personnel grouping and alignment, and he would add wrinkles to it as the game went on. It might be a run the first time you see it. The next time you see it, it might be a screen pass. Then you might add a double move or get the ball down the field. He would see what would work and stick to it and then add to it. And right now it just seems like Roman is not understanding what's not working and sticking to what's not working. He's not evolving during the game, and he's not really building on the things that are working. So
agreed. Yeah. But you know who does really well with that? Jesse Minter. He's done it every game this season, and it's kind of been his calling card. He'll come out in a specific set, and he may show blitz multiple times, and you'll see guys drop out of it. The play may work with him actually showing blitz and dedicating players to coming through, even if it's just a slot blitz. But then sometimes you'll see them line up in that exact same set, show blitz, and the slot guy will drop out and someone else will come, or it will create an overload blitz look where they're compensating to that side. And then you get one-on-ones on the opposite side for guys like Mac, and then they get home because they can win their one-on-ones. So it's just building off of things, allowing the game to develop, taking what's working, but not digging so far into it that you become overly committed. You have to be able to mix things up, even if it looks the same. And typically in football, if you can make a bunch of different plays out of similar sets or do a lot, it's even the same with route running. Keenan Allen would do it. He runs his routes at a similar pace, so you can't tell what's really coming. It all looks the same. If you can do different looks out of the same sets, then that's a way that you can make defenses have to really account for what you're doing, and makes you more dangerous. I almost kind of feel like Roman doesn't have to overthink it. There are ways that you can make it easy without having to change a bunch. You just have to be able to function within the sets that you have that are successful and make things a little bit more stressful on the defense.
Yeah, something that stood out to me watching the game too was I just really feel like, we've talked about the spacing and the splits, but even with their condensed formations, they seem like they're too condensed. Like it seems like guys are right on top of each other and they can't get out of their breaks cleanly. And they're just drawing too many defenders into one area. I think the play design and the spacing and the splits can get a whole lot better. Hopefully it does over the course of the season.
No, I'm right there with you. And especially when they run those trips or a bunch sets, it also looks like the actual routes themselves aren't run at the proper levels. When receivers are completing their routes that essentially all in the same area, and they can be defended like by one or two guys. So you're not doing yourself any favors. You're not allowing Herbert to see more parts of the field to deliver the ball to. It's almost like I get the reason for condensing your sets, and also because the wide receiver isn't one of your strong points on your roster. So you're bunching guys in different space or in the same space and allowing them to create havoc for defenders by having them have to switch off and think and communicate. Because you don't have the horses to win one-on-one. But yeah, you just got to get better overall. And the splits haven't been great, but also just the levels at which the routes are being run. It's a huge problem that they have to fix.
Agreed. All right. Next question is from Twitter. Damn it. Let's see if I can spin this.
I can make it work.
All right, go ahead and make it work.
All right. So Steven says, if DK Metcalf was actually available, what's the most you would spend to trade for him?
If DK Metcalf was available, I think you'd give up almost whatever you have to get him because of what he does for the offense in the running game and in the passing game. He fits so well. I think you probably start with a second and a late round pick and see where it goes from there.
Mm-hmm. I think this question might have come up on our last show, or it was in the Discord. I don't 100% remember, but I do remember mentioning a conditional second rounder, throwing that out there as an opportunity. But I'm right there with you. If it takes a 2 and then something else to get it done, I'm cool with that, because of everything that he creates offensively that you don't currently have. He's someone who can win one-on-one. You can use him in the short area of the field because of not just his athleticism, but his strength. He's a bigger target, so Herbert doesn't have to place the ball perfectly. He's someone that can catch the ball away from his frame, but he can also box guys out. I mean, he's a freak of an athlete as far as speed is concerned, so Herbert's not going to overthrow him. I mean, Herbert's probably not had to unload the ball or uncork it to the best of his ability in quite some time. And DK is someone that will be really, really hard to miss deep down the field. And just think about what that means for the rest of the defenses in the league. You can't overly commit to the run at that point, because if you're going to leave DK Metcalf one-on-one with a corner, even if the corner can run with him, he probably can't match him physically. So he's going to win a lot of contested balls, and he's a monster after the catch, just physically imposing. And that would probably be the ideal fit for this team in the passing game. If you only had one real number one threat, I would go for a guy like DK.
I completely agree. Let me see here. All right, I'm trying to get the second Twitter question fixed so we can actually read it without cranking our necks.
Can y'all tell that Garrett is the technical guy?
I had it all set up. I don't know what happened.
No, I'm not just blaming you because it would be me too.
So the next question is percentage of chance you think Ortiz makes a move before the deadline?
90%, if you're asking me. I don't think they can sit on their hands. I also don't believe this is going to be like Chargers teams past where they were just waiting for guys to get healthy, thinking that once the crew was all back, which, I mean, how often did that actually happen, that they would just push themselves right back into contention. I just don't believe that Joe Ortiz believes in that based off of where he came from. That wasn't their style in Baltimore, and he's brought that mentality over to the Chargers in front office. So for me, if it's all about them doing the Batman Robin thing, Jim needs players to operate this offense, specifically on the offense. I mean, they could make some moves on the defense as well, but the offense is really the problem. Then it's Joe's job to go out and make it happen. So I'm fairly certain something's coming here in the next 8 to 10 days.
Yeah, I would say chances are high. 90% is really high. I would say somewhere between 75 and 80%. I'm confident they're going to do something. I would not be surprised if it's more than one move. I just think they know what they need. They know what ails them. I think the names that we read off earlier that they're looking into all suggest that they have a complete understanding of what is ailing them and how to fix it. So I think something happens. It'd be great if two things happen. We'll see. They'll have to do some financial maneuvering to make that happen. I think they've got $8 or $9 million under the cap right now. So all these guys have at least one more year on their deal. Njoku, Ingram, Johnson, they're all signed through next year. Mm-hmm. So there's an opportunity there where if you feel like you're going to keep them beyond next year, you could maybe add another year, turn some money, turn some guaranteed money into bonus money to spread things out a little bit. There are ways that you can restructure deals to make these guys fit under the cap. And you got to think that if they're coming from bad situations into a situation that they think is a good one and they want to be here for a while, you got to think they're going to be open to restructuring those deals. And, like we've said before, if it's a matter of taking base pay and converting it to a bonus to spread over the life of the deal, then that's not something you need their permission to do because you're not actually changing the money. You're just moving it around a little bit. So there are opportunities to do that. And fingers crossed something happens. I think it will. I think they need to, whether it's to win the wild card or set themselves up for next year or both. It makes a lot of sense to add something.
Let's all pray to our Chargers Lord and Savior, Ed McGuire, because if anyone can make a miracle happen on these contracts, it would be him. So I'm really confident in that.
Ed is amazing. He's so good with the numbers and moving those contracts around. If, like you said, if anybody can do it, he can do it. So that is it for the Twitter and Discord questions. Like I mentioned earlier, we're not going to do bad tweets today. I feel like it's always the same people saying the same things about the same one or two players. It just gets a little tired. So we're going to skip bad tweets today. So I've got about 10 minutes left before I have a hard stop. So why don't we have everybody in the chat go ahead and fire up some questions and we'll grab a handful of questions and answer those before we call it a day. So go ahead and get your questions in. Craig, what are your expectations for the game this weekend?
Everything's fighting me today. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
What are your expectations for the game this weekend?
So I'm looking forward to, I don't think it's going to be as easy a game as what I think a lot of people believe it to be. And maybe I'm just a little burned by that performance against the Cardinals because I expected them to really go to Arizona and lay waste to them. So you've got a rookie quarterback who they should be able to manhandle. Spencer Rattler has a lot going on as far as, trying to manage an offense where he's down. Well, I think he's getting a couple guys back on the offensive side of the ball, which is going to help. Chris Olave being one of those. He's also getting an offensive lineman back. So he's going to have some more weapons and some better protection. But I think as far as decision-making goes, it kind of breaks down when you pressure him. So ultimately, if the Chargers can just be relentless on the defensive side of the ball, there are going to be opportunities for them to make plays there. The question is what version of the offense is going to show up this week? The Saints, while they don't have a fantastic defense as far as where it's ranked right now, their secondary is still very talented. So I don't think passing the ball is going to be a walk in the park, but they can be had right now in the running game. But we also said the same thing about Arizona last week. So ultimately, I think what it boils down to for me is the Chargers probably feel a little perturbed about their performance on Monday, and they come out and they give a full 4 quarters of fiery effort. I would not be surprised if Harbaugh laid into them this week and they come out with a point to prove. I still think it'll be a relatively lower scoring game. Are we doing predictions or what? What do you think?
Why not? Why not?
All right. So I think for me, it's probably the Chargers 17-13. That's my guess. I want them to score over 20 points again, though, because in all of their wins, I think the lowest that they've scored in any win has been 22. And the fact that your defense is holding teams to under 14 points per game on average is ridiculous. You gotta get some more W's. Defense is doing all it can, and they're even doing it shorthanded. So figure it out.
Yeah, I think the Chargers win this game. I had them winning it even before Derek Carr got hurt. The Saints are not playing very good football. Their defense looks really bad. The interior of their offensive line is in about as bad a shape as the interior of the Chargers offensive line is right now, and they lost their best deep threat. So I think this is a game the Chargers win. I said on the walkthrough that I had them winning 27-13. And I think the difference ultimately is I think they're going to force at least 2 turnovers from Spencer Rattler.
Mm-hmm.
I could see a couple strip sacks leading to short fields and touchdowns to make things easier on them. So I have a 27-13 win. I don't think the Saints are very good. Carter, who I had on the walkthrough this week, said that he feels like they're starting to see signs of the team not listening to their head coach at this point. So it sounds like they're checking him out and the message isn't working. So hopefully we just get a full lay down and the Chargers get to steamroll them.
Hey, whatever it takes to get the win. I don't care what version of the Saints show up. The Chargers just need to beat them. That's all I'm concerned with. And I also don't plan on sitting in SoFi for a solid 3 to 4 hours and watching a Saints victory and have to go back home with my wife and allow her to tease me the entire flight. I'm not down for that. So Chargers need to get it together and pull off a dub here for me, if nothing else.
Do it for Craig.
Thank you.
Win one for Craig. So we got a question here from Nick Shepard. He says, Alvin Kamara seems weird as heck. Why? Not going to lie. That was my first reaction too. The running game, specifically the running backs, really aren't the problem right now. But I think for me, just having a couple days to think about it, I'm still not crazy about it because it's the running back position. And obviously he signed his extension, so it's probably not going to happen. But for me, I think it really just comes down to setting themselves up for next year and beyond. I think they were looking at extending him. JK's on a 1-year deal. They probably do not at this point see Vidal as an every down back or even somebody who's going to be a big part of a rotation. So I think they're just looking ahead, seeing somebody who can maybe add to the passing game now and maybe add some explosive plays to the running game.
Yeah. I think we mentioned it a little bit earlier as well, but Kamara feels almost like a running back in the mold of what they were looking for in Saquon Barkley this offseason when apparently they were throwing their names in the hat for him. But again, as the season has materialized, I think the focus needed to shift and running backs aren't necessarily the problem. So as nice as it would have been to have a dynamic threat like him, I think you're still dealing with the same issues, even if you acquired him, because he's not going to make your interior offensive line issues disappear. So overall, it did seem super weird, but I mean, I know fans hearing that probably sounds a little exciting to some, whereas I think a lot of us were just kind of like puzzled a bit and you had like the cartoon question marks above your head about it. So yeah, I don't think it makes sense right now either.
All right. Next question is from Just Tails. He says, Deontay and any of those tight ends seem like just great news. Preference between the big three, Chig, Njoku, or Ingram. So, Craig, if you had your druthers, which of the three tight ends would you take?
For me, Njoku is 1A. Just because of the proven production, maybe a little bit of the fact that he went to Miami, and I'm a Hurricanes fan, has something to do with it. But no, he's an excellent player. Is one of the best in the league, and I think he's coming off of a career year just season prior, and he allows you to do so much on the offense. When we're talking about stretching the field vertically, creating easy butts for Herbert, and someone who's a really great target in the red zone as well. When you have eyes on a tight end like that, it creates openings for your other wide receivers. So Ladd can kind of operate in the slot almost in sometimes next to Njoku, and it would be terror for defense staff to figure out how to contend with that. So I would love to have David Njoku on this roster.
Njoku is a good option. I might go a separate route. I like Evan Ingram. I like him as a move tight end, somebody who can play in the slot, who can line up out wide, create mismatches for you. I think he would change a lot of things for them in the middle of the field, force defenses to really focus on the tight end and maybe take some pressure off of Ladd a little bit in the slot. So I just think Ingram is very, very good as a receiving tight end, not so much as a blocker, but very good as a receiving tight end. He's a guy who can make you miss. He can extend plays with his, or create with his legs after the catch. I just think he'd be a lot of fun in this offense based on the way they've run this offense in the past with tight ends.
You know what? And I want to throw this in there too. They need a target monster. Either one of these guys can be that. And when you think about a defense having to literally have one of them be the focal point, imagine what that does for the rest of your receiving option.
Yeah, it changes a lot for them. Either one of those guys does.
Mm-hmm.
Chig, not so much. I think he'd be fun in the screen game. But I don't know that he really commands that level of attention that Ingram and Njoku do.
No, I like Chig too, but he's just not quite that player.
All right, we got one more question, then we got to get out of here. Let's see what we have. All right. If you had to choose only one for us to trade for, would it be a wide receiver or a tight end?
For me, it's tight end, unless the wide receiver is DK Metcalf. That's the exception. So for me, tight end, again, for all of the reasons why we expressed specifically why either of those two options would be advantageous for the rest of the offense, specifically the other wide receivers.
Yeah, I agree. Mostly because unless you land like a Cooper Kupp or you land a DK Metcalf, obviously they're different types of receivers, but unless you're landing a big name, highly productive wide receiver, most of the wide receivers they've checked in on, to me, they're not that exciting. I think they help. They change things a little bit. I don't know how much they move the needle. I think either one of those tight ends moves the needle for them offensively much more so than a Deontay Johnson does, for example. Not that he'd be a bad trade, but just my opinion. I think they change more for the offense.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for coming and checking out the show with us today. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry for the technical issues. Not sure we've had that happen before with so many technical issues in one show. So thanks for being patient. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend and go Chargers. We're looking for a win on Sunday.
Yeah, man, let's pull this off and get to 3-2. And I'm sorry, 4-3. What am I thinking about? And got the rest of the season ahead of us. And let's see what happens going to the trade deadline. So we got a lot to look forward to. Lots of fun ahead.
All right. We will see you next time, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. I'm taking your line and salute.